Welcome, everybody, to Late Night Latte with NdalaLive, my very first one, which I'm super excited about. So I'm really happy that you all took your time to come out this evening and spend this time with me, share some space to talk a little bit about rethinking thinking. So I am going to ask each of you, since there aren't many people here, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves. So we will start with my top left corner, and that would be Samantha English. So Sam.
Why, hello, everybody. Good evening. I'm glad to be here. I'm Sam. I'm a higher education executive, and I'm super passionate about helping people change their life through education. And I am so thrilled to be here to discuss Rethinking Thinking. It's an awesome book, and it really does change the way you approach everyday life. And I'm thankful to be here today.
Thank you. And I am so happy to have you, Sam. Thank you. Okay, so then over in the right-hand corner is Trina.
Hello, everyone. I'm Petrina Palmer. You see Muscle Dog up there. You probably won't be able to see it, but we have our book, and I also have it on my Kindle so I can make my notes and different things. Either way I like to go. And my husband and I have a profit and nonprofit business, and so we have Fetch Global Media and Initiative, and Muscle Dog is the character. He's had that character since he was like 14, and so it's an animated character. So check us out on any social media. Just put in Muscle Dog, double G. But Indala and I have been best friends forever since college. So I have been one of her biggest supporters.
True.
So happy that she is where she is in her career, and help her wherever I can as we're both going through all of these different changes in our lives. So excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have you here too, Trina.
Yeah.
So, and then down here in the left-hand corner is Tony Harvey.
Hello, everyone. And Dala and I have known each other, won't say how many years, but many.
Long time.
And she's always been an inspiration. From the day one I met her, she was leading out a conference, and we have collaborated throughout the years. A little bit about me. I went to Oakwood. Her mother was the chair of the department from which I matriculated through, and was very essential in allowing me to do what I do so I could move to LA and become a movie producer and executive and worked in entertainment. I'm excited to actually really help Ndala push this book out to the world, helping people think clearly, executives, leaders, thought leaders. It's a great book. I've just begun reading it, but it's already I can hear her voice,
Oh my God.
the amazing things.
Saying that.
So absolutely.
Thank you, Tony. I'm so happy you're here. Okay, and here's a little secret. Tony is our third baby's godfather. Our third baby, Giannis, who is not a baby anymore. He's actually 26. And
grown man.
He's a grown man. He's a grown man. So I'm so glad you're here, Tony. Thank you. I know you have a very busy life. I'm so glad you could be here. And in the middle of this bar down here on the bottom is Nation Statham. Nation, Richard.
Hello. I'm so happy to be here. I've pretty much known Ndala my entire life, pretty much.
My gosh,
because
it's true.
You're married to my cousin, and I've seen you everywhere, watched the kids grow up.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've always admired and watched how you develop and how you think, how you speak. So getting this book was actually so right on point, because I've been experiencing trying to critically think on my own, but seeing it in a more complicated way. But this book has really helped me understand it and apply it a whole lot better. So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm glad that you wrote this book, and I'm glad to support you.
Thank you, Nation. And I have known Nation since he was like 6 or 7. I think
Hmm.
that's how old he was when my husband and I got married. And
Yeah.
now he's a grown man with his own kids, and he's been in the military. He served in
Yeah.
the military. Thank you for your
Yeah.
service.
No
And
problem.
so, yeah, I mean, just really good to have you here, Nation. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you.
And last but never least is Sory Rivera. Sory, tell us about you.
Hi, everybody. I too am a former service member, so thank you for your service as well. I run a pay-per-call company that focuses on insurance products, right? So I am actually the chief of staff, and my job is 80% managing the CEO and 20% managing everybody else. So yay for me. And so critical thinking is essential, right? And so this book actually came out at a really good time for me. I'm really excited to be here and I'm drinking some wine. Okay.
Yay! Okay, that's it. Anybody else drinking anything? What is everybody else drinking? No?
Got
Trina, you
some
got your
tea over
water.
here.
I got
Oh,
water.
Sam has
A
tea.
little
Apple
Okay.
late
juice.
for
Nation,
coffee for me.
Nation's got some apple juice.
Might need
And
to
of
up it up
course,
here.
I have my iced mocha
Of
latte.
course.
It's actually a black and white mocha. It has 2 pumps of regular mocha, 2 pumps of white mocha, and 1 pump of sugar-free vanilla and almond milk. And so that is going to be what I'm going to enjoy as we are having this this session tonight. Okay, so it was suggested that I read something from the book. So let me read a passage here, and then I'm going to ask you what you think about it. Actually, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to read a scenario. I think that's the first one I'm going to read.
Page.
This one is on page 99. It's on page 99. Okay? So this is about point of view. Okay. So, okay, I got to put my glasses on. I'm sorry. All right, that's better. Much better. Here we go. The where you stand depends on where you sit show. The Smith family dinner table, a perspective pandemonium. Imagine one dinner table transforming into 6 completely different universes because perspective is the ultimate reality warping superpower. Mom's scanning the kitchen like a mess detection expert, every dirty dish a potential crime scene. Dad's basking in what he sees as pure Norman Rockwell worthy family bonding time. The teen, trapped in what feels like a mandatory family reunion, silently plotting their great escape. The kid had discovered the ultimate vegetable disposal system, aka the family dog, who is absolutely living its best life and seeing this dinner as an all you can eat buffet of drop treats. And grandma? She's locked, loaded, and ready to fire her classic generational artillery, beaming in from an entirely different era where phones were for important calls, not table accessories, and family dinners were sacred communication rituals. In my day, we didn't have phones at the table, which elicits the teenager's universal, oh, please, eye roll, and the reply, Grandma, you're acting like modern technology is one step away from the complete moral collapse of civilization. Okay, so same dinner, 6 completely different movies playing. Welcome to the wild world of point of view, where reality is less about what happens and more about how we see what happens. So,
Mm.
what do you think about that? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of
Well,
all, when I read it in my brain, that's exactly how I read it with your voice, you know? So it was nice to be validated that I read it correctly. And I love how you captured like how my family dinner table is as well, with everyone just thinking of their own perspective and how it can be a completely different story depending on who's telling it.
Yeah, yeah. Nation, you were gonna say too.
yes, because I live that life right now, minus the grandma part. So with 2 high schoolers, my wife working, me and my life and my things and my universe, and then everybody coming together wanting to eat, and it's part of everybody wanting to escape for some reason. I
Yeah.
don't know why sometimes it feels a little odd or awkward, or when you ask the question, but understanding how they feel and trying to ask the right question to provide that type of engagement is the
Mm,
critical thinking part that I think always goes into those types of situations. And
yeah.
especially like in families where you know the dynamic and it is a standard, it is a it is a known fact, then going into that prepared kind of gives you an idea how to navigate it, or those known things come up, you can correct it or adjust or mitigate the damage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. You know what I think about when I think about that scenario is how easy it is, especially for us as parents, right? To think that everybody's thinking the same thing. Like if we're excited about having dinner together, it's like dinner together as a family, yeah. But and then that's easy because that's how we feel. Because that's
Right.
our frame of reference. It's our point of view. I love having dinner with my family. I love having everybody around. I love the laughter and the jokes and the fun. But the reality comes from the idea that everybody's got their own perspective, and you might have one that's in some sort of conversation with a friend, and they don't really want to engage with the family right at this moment. They want to keep having that conversation, or whatever else it might be. Playing a video game, and now I got to go sit down at the table when I was right in the middle of my video game.
Yes.
So yeah, yeah. Anything else?
Yeah,
Anybody want to add something
yeah,
on
and I like because I experienced this like recently, understanding how I respond to that type of, because I know I'm interrupting something because that's just how teenagers are.
It's all
So I know
controlling.
it is. So there's an approach. Hey, get downstairs. I told you it was ready at 7:30. Let's go. Going into it that way, or just going in there and just being nosy. What are we doing in here? And annoying them
You
until
know
they
what?
move.
I could see you do that, Nation. I could actually see you doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, and the kids have told us that when we did that with them as kids, when we actually walked in and was like, so, hey, what's going on in here? Like, how are you guys doing? They really appreciated that more than what we thought, because I thought that they'd be really annoyed by us doing stuff like that, but they did appreciate it. So that's interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So anything else? Anybody want to add anything else to that conversation? Can you think of anything? When it comes to point of view. That's really important. I think that even having the conversation about perspectives and point of view, that's a family scenario. Can you imagine going into a meeting at work with 5 people, 7 people, and what the different perspectives might be? We assume that we're in this meeting and we're all in here together about the same goal, but there are points of view in the room that could be vastly different, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I get the grandma's point, but at the same time, the teen, whatever the teen is going through at that moment is super important to them, right? And
Exactly.
it's just their reality. So, and the mom's reality of, making sure everything's perfect and
Yeah.
everything's great and all of that. Um, when I read that, I was kind of like, I'm sad that traditional family dinners don't exist in
Mm.
the same sense that they had in the past. I couldn't touch my drink until I was done my meal,
Yeah.
And so, but we talked about like the day, they asked questions about our day, like how was
Yeah.
your, or, and it didn't happen like every day, but like for them to ask us questions. And I read somewhere one time that, family dinners should be really good to discuss what's a good and a suck, like what sucked today and what
Yeah.
was good today. And
Yeah.
maybe if they made it more like, like people were actually like bringing something to the table every day. Like, I can't wait to tell them some good news or something like that. Like, it would have been something that maybe we would have held on to better. I don't know.
Yeah, and then I love this, Sori. I love the idea of asking for different things, like what was the good point of today and what was the suck point of today, and not making that so ritual that you're not listening to the answer.
Hmm.
Right. Because then, like, if you're in your mind, you're busy thinking about something else, and then you're asking your kids, okay, I need to do this because this is a tradition of us to do this. And then you're like, okay, what was one good thing today? Oh, great. What was one suck thing today? Oh, I'm
Right. You
sorry
got
to
to
hear
make it
that.
like
Right.
you got to make it an organic like conversation
Yeah.
where or hey, what's so important on the phone today? Or,
Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
bring it to today's world, right? Like back then, there wasn't that thing. So,
Yeah, we didn't have that. Obviously, that wasn't even something we had to deal with bringing the phone to the table because it
yeah,
would have been connected to a cord.
right. It was a long
It was
cord.
hanging on the wall.
To make it. It was a long cord, but yeah, no.
So yeah, no, but so things are a little different, and no, and I think that that does make sense. But if you're critically thinking, right? So if as a parent you are critically thinking through the idea of there are different perspectives in the room, and not only are you thinking about it, but you're not annoyed by it, you're actually embracing the idea that you've got different perspectives in the room, then when you ask the question, then you are interested in hearing what was good for you today and what sucked for you today.
Yeah.
You know, that's awesome. I love that. Tony.
How do you bring that into the boardroom when get your team around the conference table? What of everyone's perspective needs to be discussed? Does everyone's perspective needs to be considered, or are we trying to merge into a singular perspective?
Whoa.
Sorry.
Question, right?
No, it's a great question.
It's a great question.
Um,
Yeah.
Iron task.
So it's interesting. Have you guys heard of EOS?
Yes.
Yes, very much
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Do you guys implement EOS in your organizations? So
No.
it's
EOS give us the acronym. It's the employee operating
entrepreneurial
system.
operating system.
Yeah, entrepreneurial operating system.
And I feel like they have a good framework for this. I don't think that they've completely figured it out, to your question, Tony. I don't think they've completely figured it out, but with the expectation that you're going to have to dig deep and come up with a win personally and also a win professionally for the previous week when you start that conversation, it not only gets everybody engaged, but it allows for you to kind of see their headspace as to where they're at and what they're thinking about, right? So I make a note of everybody's wins professionally, and personally, and I kind of revert back to that on my one-on-ones throughout the week. Right? So I can talk to them about it. And then they're more open and apt to want to discuss more about themselves personally or professionally on the next call. Do you know what I mean? So it's not so much of a bear and it's a task like, oh shit, I'm gonna get called on next, right? It's more of like, I can't wait to kind of say what it is that I'm thinking and then dig into that deeper later on in the week. So long as you have an agenda, obviously, that works for everybody and you're all like working towards a common goal.
Yeah.
I can see how that ties into the family dynamic too, because it creates a sense of a kind of an anticipation for that gathering, for that meeting.
Right.
Because number one, you have something that you're tasked to bring to it. So then you then have to critically think about, what am I going to present? What interaction am I going to have that is going to be quality enough? Because especially in group dynamics, there's a competition sometimes. So sometimes having that win based on something allows you to think further. So even just having that as a principle, like coming to the table, or even if it's in the boardroom, having that knowing going in allows the participant or the person that you're managing to kind of come in already with some wins already, with that anticipation.
I love
I
that.
like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things that I've used similar to EOS is Covey's like 4 dynamic principles, and they start with a wildly important goal. We can only really accomplish 1 or 2 things that are really, really important to the organization or the family, though I haven't, done that. But as far as organization, the first thing we start with, I like to start with, is an agenda. So we don't get to the meeting, we don't discuss anything if it's not on the agenda first. So people have had a chance to kind of think through it, look at what they thought, put their opinions into it, and then begin that. So there's a preliminary meeting kind of the minds before we even get there.
So your agenda changes on a regular basis.
Huh?
So your agenda changes on a per call basis. Is that what you're saying?
So okay, so in the structure, there are things that lead and there's things that lag, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I can use something more personal and simple, like I want to lose 30 pounds.
Oh,
Well, today's goal has to be 5 miles,
right,
on the treadmill.
right. You're
So
leading action to get that lagging indicator.
correct, to
Yeah,
get
yeah.
it in there. And then so what we do is we keep a scorecard together.
Yeah.
And so that scorecard allows us to then keep up to date with everyone, and we all check in. There's wins. If you made 100, I mean, I use sales. We made 100 cold calls in a day per
And that
team.
was your goal. Got
X,
it.
Y, that was the goal, right?
Yeah.
And the obvious lag goal is to get 2 or 3 clients for this week. We have this goal, and then we measure it. And so part of that then rolls back into critical thinking, because you can't put a process together without that organized system or some framework for doing it. And that's what I think is important about looking at our point of view prior to getting into that space and then thinking through it.
Mm.
That would be great if you could give some insight, for someone like me, I got to go back to my team. A lot of times I need new kind of motivators. Yeah, we can use a framework, but I like to trigger some action and get some fire under people. So I would love to
Yeah.
hear your
I
perspective.
love that.
What we do at here is professional, personal, and financial goals, and we map those out for short-term, medium, and long-term goals, and then we follow up on those on every one-on-one of like what are the milestones that we're doing to get to those goals. And it's been a great
KPI.
way to understand my team and what they're trying to accomplish in their lives. And when
Mhm.
reading the book, the POV of reality check was like, because I know my team members so well, not just their work selves, but their personal selves, I could put my feet in their shoes and look at a challenge we're trying to overcome or a project we're trying to complete and see like I'm not a finance person, but I know our finance person enough to know like I know it's important to her that she gets her emails, her invoices immediately. So this 5 minute lag, that's not something she's gonna like, you know?
Right,
So
right.
to look at the process from what's important to everybody in the room. And so I really liked that the book went over, what's the reality check? How are other ways to look at different types of problems or challenges? And your way is not always the right way. And when somebody comes to you with a better way, that's a win because more brains are better than one brain any day of the week, and you should never take it personally because that's how you grow and learn.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so true. I think collaboration is important. That's one thing that I've really learned well because in academia, it's interesting because when you're in academics, you teach your subject. And unless there are several teachers that are teaching that subject, which is, sometimes not the case, especially if you're at a smaller private university, then what happens is you might be the only chemistry professor or you might be the only physics professor. So then there's nobody to really, in your mind, there's nobody to collaborate with because you are the expert in your field. But in meeting people that I've met over the course of the past 10 years and finding myself in the performance marketing space, I have learned about collaboration and networking, and it's really important. I think it was easier for me to write certain parts of the book with the scenarios that I was choosing because of the fact that I've been in the performance marketing space and I can see how people network and how they collaborate. And you have to have a certain mindset for that, right? Because
Right.
we talked a little bit about competition. The nation said something about the competition that happens like with different individuals and who wants to be the best at. But if we can understand that we're all coming together as a collaboration to make some goal for some purpose, right? So purpose being one of the components, one of the elements of thinking, then it makes it easier. You walk in the room, we all know what our purpose is, and we're collaborating to get to this purpose. So
Mm.
yeah, so I love that. I love that. Now, and I know, Sam, I know you have to go in just a few minutes because you got to go pick up Jack.
I
But
know I have another soundbite though.
okay,
One
so
of my
that's what I was
favorite
going to say to
quotes.
you. Oh,
One
favorite
of my
quote.
favorite quotes from the book. As a person who works hard and life's hard, it is hard not to be hard on yourself. So when I read "The goal isn't perfection, it's progress," that really resonated with me. The fact that these
Oh,
are tools in our toolkit and that the brain is a muscle that we got to keep working on it. And every day I try to use one of these tools to be a better thinker. And it's already
Mm.
resonated not just in my work life, but my personal life. And I thank you, Nadala, for bringing this to my life. So thank you for inviting me here today.
of
And if this
course.
wasn't a very special Jack pickup, I would stay and not go, but it's his
No,
last
I
day of
do.
school. So
I love this. I love
invite me
that
to
you
the
were
next one,
here.
please.
Thank you so very much. I
Yes.
absolutely will invite you to the next one. And
Thank
Sam,
you.
you were the one, as you were reading the book, every other day I was getting text messages from you like, oh my gosh.
Like
Like every
chocolate
day.
teapot. You would make me laugh. Da da da. Like it's Jeopardy time. I'm like, what's going on now?
Oh, I'm
It
so
was very
glad.
nice to meet you all. Thank you for the
You too.
opportunity.
You
Yes.
too.
Pleasure,
All right,
Sam. Have a
bye,
great day.
Sam. Be safe.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
I was going to say all the things that you were sharing too, and what I used to do, and still kind of do for with our business, is I worked in last part was agile, and so I was a scrum master and servant leader, and same principles apply. You know, you have to hear people out. They have to have psychological safety in being able to share, that their opinion is not the same as the others on the team. And then
Hmm.
being able to come to, you may not be like, they still may not agree, but what is, again, the team critically thinking through the whole thing, which one of the answers or suggestions is the best for the team at this time? That other thing may be able to do it down the road, and we had to think through those kind of things to say, hey, and as a scrum master, I was like, hey, I get what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I repeat it back. I make sure we're on the same page. I said, but based on what we've discussed, would you agree that this might be the better thing to do at this point
Hmm.
versus going down that road? Now, I'm going to put it down. I'm going to put it in our backlog. I'm going to, make sure I capture it and we can come back and revisit what you're thinking. But right now, let's move forward with this. And so when you talk to people like that, you hear them out, then a lot of times because you critically thought through it and got them to think through it as well, even though they still may not agree 100% all the time, but most times after you talk through it, they'll say, okay, I get it. We'll do that now. And then please come back and revisit what I'm saying later. And you,
Mm-hmm.
okay.
And that's a good way to have a conversation, right? Like I've seen on my team how people communicate to one another when somebody says something about something that they might not agree with, and they're attacking.
Yeah.
And instead of listening fully to it and being like, okay, that's your perspective. Now how about you look at it like this, and here's why. It's more,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's not the right way to look at it. You're looking at it wrong. Do it my
Mm-hmm.
way, you
Right.
know? And it's very kind of like pointing fingers and it's very negative.
Yeah.
And so that's when, thankfully I'm able to think critically about it and jump in and say, and I'll do a DM because this is over Slack, right? We do a lot of communication over Slack and it's not first person. And of course, they might not mean the attitude that they're portraying in their text, but it comes across as snotty and disrespectful, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'll send a DM and I'll tell the person that had the original thought, don't back down.
Mm.
I'm not going to talk to the person that was snotty first. I'm going to talk to the person that had a fucking valid point first. And I'm going to tell them, "Hey, don't back down.
Yeah.
You're right. You're looking at the data and you're thinking about it critically. Don't stop."
So that's the autonomous thinking that we talk about as far as one of
Yeah.
the intellectual traits or one of the intellectual traits, virtues. It's both the same thing. So, and intellectual autonomy has to do with, obviously, being able to think for yourself, reason for yourself, and draw your own conclusions without, not taking other people's ideas into consideration, but really being able to stand on something that you've thought through, that you reasoned through, and that you've drawn a conclusion for,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think that's really important, especially in the workplace,
Yeah.
especially in the workplace.
And it's so interesting when I think about this from the military, my military mind, and how much of a deconstruction I had to do when I retired from the Army and to civilian life, because that critical thinking portion is kind of robbed from you through military service, because there's certain SOPs, there's certain standards, there's certain objectives that are standard across the board, which are there so that you don't have to critically think. Now, as you transfer from the lower ranks, all the way through leadership roles, that's where you are in a position where you have to critically think, because you have to care for the soldiers and their families. And so this book, this type of instruction, I think we didn't have when I was in the military. It may have changed now since I got out, but allowing that type of thinking, that critical thinking about perspectives in the military at a more junior level would make it so much a more cohesive unit, because it's out of fear and punishment, you get the same result, but it's not as lasting, and it doesn't set you up for success once you separate from it. So I'm curious to you, Ndala, like, how do you, in the type of military, you know me enough to know the military side of things, how transitioning from that, even though you feel it's effective and it works, and trying to transition to now listen to, like, my wife, for instance, and trying to, because I feel my way is the most efficient. And I feel that I've done this numerous times with this desired result. And so trying to bend that or adjust that change part of critical thinking, I think, is the most crucial part for me in my experience. Being okay with change and trying to, do that type.
No, but I mean, Nation, that's what this is. That's what critical thinking is all about, right? So I was just talking to Tony earlier today, and one of the biggest things is who said it? Sam, sorry, who said something about not the piece that talks about it's not about being perfect. It's
Right.
not,
There was
it's
That was
not
Sam.
about perfection, right? Sam said that. So
Yeah.
that's the thing, right? So this is something that we're practicing all the time. And I was telling Tony today, I'm like, we should be practicing our thinking the same way we practice anything else. So if there's an instrument that we play, or if there's, if there is some sport that we're a part of, or whatever it is, we should be practicing our thinking just like we practice those other things. So when you say you're coming out and now just the fact that you're to me, just the fact that you're acknowledging that there is something that you need to do in order to make sure that you have a better mindset, that's like a first step. Like G.I. Joe back in the day. You might be too young for that, Nation, but you remember
Oh,
Nation
I'm
saying,
all about that. I'm an 80s
now
baby.
you know, and knowing is half the battle. You remember that? So
Right.
so now it's like you understand that and you recognize, the interesting thing is, I think for a long time, and you can still see it in different aspects of life, which is just really interesting. A lot of things that we're taught, well, for some of us, I can't say this, I have to be fair-minded and say this is not necessarily for everybody, but a lot of the things that we're taught through emotion of fear or
Yeah.
something else, right? So it's like somebody's telling you need to do this because if you don't, this will happen, right? Or like you said, the whole deconstruction and then reconstruction that you have to go through when it comes to military mindset, military life, right? So if those things are done because they're based on fear, then when you say it's not lasting, there's a reason, because emotion is not lasting. Right? Emotion is like an ocean. Like you have up emotions and down, and they just this is just the waves of the ocean. It's like that's what emotions are. So if you're learning something that's based on an emotion, or think about this, if you've ever made a change based on an emotion, and then a couple of weeks later you're like, why am I not doing that anymore? Is because the emotion has shifted now, so it's not as important. Right? So it's just like if you're in a relationship and in that relationship you get into an argument, and then you're angry, you're upset, you're like, maybe I shouldn't be in this relationship. And maybe even for 24 to 48 hours, you're debating on whether or not you should be in the relationship. But then the emotion begins to subside, the wave starts to come up, you start feeling better, so then you stay, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Can I ask a question?
yes, of course.
It was pretty interesting what you said, Nation. I think there's a question that I have is when do you go from guesswork to imagination to actual protocol?
Yeah.
Because, people could give their perspective, but sometimes it's just guesswork. They're trying to speculate on the analysis, and then they really are passionate about it because, yeah, that's two layers down from where we're at. We need to get up here because we need to think creatively about it, or we need to follow through this protocol so that if in case someone needs to be replaced, this protocol just follows the same measure. When do you choose how to, delegate the point of perspective?
That's a good question.
Sorry.
Nature's like, yes.
Yeah, when does that count? When is that good? When is
Yeah.
that
When,
appropriate?
when did you stop guessing, imagining, and then actually following through with the right perspective or a collective perspective?
Yeah.
So, so for me, in performance marketing, it's the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to guess. There is an equation, right, in digital marketing. Okay. And it's in all marketing, but in digital marketing, you can track it all, which is what's amazing, right? Like you sell a magazine and you can get X amount of impressions on your ad on page 75,
Mm-hmm.
but you're guessing, right? Digital
Mm-hmm.
marketing, we know how many impressions we get. We know how many clicks we get on the ad. We know how many clicks we get on the page. We know how many people fill out the form. We know how many people call in. We
There's
know,
data.
right?
Yeah, it's a lot of
So
Mm-hmm.
data.
for us, it's a little different. And if somebody's talking at a guesswork level, they're going to be called out pretty freaking quick.
Right.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's a formula.
Yeah.
There's a formula. There are different KPIs that we measure, and you can't do a lot of guesswork in it, So that's a really great question. But for me, and I'm thinking professionally now, like if somebody's doing a lot of guesswork, they're gonna get called out pretty quick, right?
Mm.
Um, Now, if you're talking about something that, was said earlier about the military, and the reason why they kind of brainwash you is because they have that hierarchy, right? And they don't want you to go beyond your hierarchy. What is it called? It's not the hierarchy. It's
Chain of command.
chain of command, right? They want you to follow that chain of command blindly, right?
Mm.
So the military might not be the best example to think about it, but those that excel in the military, you
They do that.
see how they can maybe sway their superiors to a particular way of thinking that gets them somewhere further faster.
And that is a great point because it is not it's not conducive to good order and discipline to have everybody doing that. But when the one or two that are bold enough to step outside of that, come up with something ingenious, say Sergeant Audie Murphy, a person like that who were willing to think, they are so impactful that it's something that you would want to carry on. But the good order and discipline part, because everybody, just like what Harvey was saying, was that like, okay, where does that fit in? Right now we're at this level, we have steps to this and there's protocol. So when can I factor that in to be the most efficient or the most, where its value can be used the most?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love
No,
it.
it's interesting when you brought up the KPI elements where you have to measure all of the results. It's interesting because there are metrics. Once you get past the metric, yeah, you got the result of interaction, but did you get the result of sale? To go a little further,
Yeah.
it's really the question of like when the team is getting together to give their perspectives, at what point do you eliminate guesswork go into actual imagination. That's where we're asking for it, and then we get into some layer of protocol or structure to execute that.
So then maybe that has to be built into a strategy, right?
Right.
And maybe it has to be, if you critically think that through what you just said, and you know that this is a process that you want to go through, then maybe there has to be a strategy for that that's put in place,
Right. Right.
you know?
Yeah, and also there needs to be somebody that holds them accountable to attain those things, right?
Sure.
Right.
So your reasoning for not, so like we use the OS like I mentioned earlier, but we also break it down a little bit more and say, are you on track or off track, right?
Mm.
And these are leading actions that we're talking about for a lagging indicator. And so
Mhm.
it's one of those things where we're just like, okay, so what's the current status, on track or off track? And then we are like, okay, so why? What's the corrective action? Do you need support? And when will it be back on track?
Mm.
Right?
Right. Right.
And so when they keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, they're just doing the guesswork, or it's just they haven't gotten to imagination phase, right?
Gotcha.
They
Gotcha.
haven't gotten there yet. So then you need somebody that's going to come in, step in, and say, listen, that flew last week, but that's not gonna fly this week. I'm not swallowing what you're giving me right now. Like that's
Mhm.
just not gonna work. And
Mhm.
so they need, and I hate doing it, but on the spot thinking is
Hmm.
essential for survival in any business.
Yep.
Right.
In
Yep.
any relationship, really, if you wanted to break it down that way, like, you keep doing something wrong or you don't have answers for it, like at some point you need to, pay the piper.
So then
Right.
that's where and then that is exactly where that critical thinking fits in, because then you can utilize the framework to figure that out, right? So it's almost the same as, it literally is just like losing your car in the parking lot of the mall, right? That should only really happen one time. Like you said, somebody shouldn't be saying the same thing over and over, because there should be, stop it. Stop it, Sorry. Did you just cover your face?
I've lost my car every time I park somewhere.
Oh my gosh, no, that shouldn't
If
happen.
I
That's
didn't have
so,
an app that actually took me to my car, I
oh
would
my gosh.
never.
No, I lost my car one time in the airport parking garage, because it's two sides and they look exactly the same. And I let that happen to me one time. After that, I said to myself, what am I missing? What information do I need in order to never lose my car again? And that was just a simple step. So it was like taking a picture of where I am and making sure that as I back away from my car, I'm looking around to see what are the markers around where it is that I parked, so that I know. And then when I get to the elevator, like, which level is this? Do I need to take a picture of it to remember from this time to last time? Because the reason was because my husband was traveling every month, sometimes twice and three times a month, because he was a consultant. And so I was going to pick him up at the airport, and I was always going in to meet him, and I would park and go in and then come out and like, where's my car? That was not going to happen to me more than once, because that was really scary for me to not know where my car was and to be walking around trying to hit the button so that I could hear the car. Yeah, I know that was really
I
scary.
can't count on one hand how many. I mean, it's like two.
Okay, sorry. That's why you had. So speaking of that, let's transition to this really quick. I know, sorry, you're using the book. So what was it that stood out for you in this book that you're
Oh,
actually utilizing?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I texted to you, but I will bring it up again. I think I have it bookmarked. It's basically, I can't find it right this second, but I remember it. So when you're suggesting something to a team, right? And me coming in, and I've only been doing this job for 4 weeks as chief of staff. Okay. They know me well in the industry. I've been doing this almost 23 years. And I come with really great credentials and all of that. But how do you instill trust in your team, and have them follow your lead? Okay. And so this book gave me a really great example of, don't just delegate, but take the initiative, provide something, and tell them to poke holes into that thing, right? So that's how I go into every project. Go into every project the same way. Guys, I put the bones and this kind of like a basic structure of it together, and I say, what am I missing in this? what is needed in this? What can we add to make it better? And
Mm.
the feedback and the response and the work that has been put into the team doing exactly what needs done has been freaking outstanding.
I
It
love
really
it.
has been. And
I love
so
it.
I've always like I've always had really good suggestions on how things should be done, but I never went the extra step to actually put the basics of it together to have somebody then poke holes into it. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I love that. I am so happy that that is one of the concepts that's working because I think that that goes hand in hand with the whole the chapter on ego, that crazy ego, because of the fact that in order to be a really good, strong sense thinker, you have to recognize that even if it's something that's been done over and over and over again, and I used to tell my students this, right? So they come through high school with a GPA of 4.5, which is,
Mhm.
beyond a 4.0, and they come in and I hear them like, this is going to be a breeze, this is going to be no problem, I got this, I get a 4.5. And so I used to tell them what got you here may not keep you here. So even though you had these great study skills that you were doing over and over again, and you're like, oh, I know this, I've taken this type of a test. No, now you're elevating to higher education. So there may be something you need to tweak, you need to add, you need to enhance in order to make it work. So it's the same thing with a job situation, right? And even like with, let's just COVID, for example, right? If you, after COVID, if you went into a hospital with certain symptoms, people might automatically assume it's COVID, but you're not allowed to do that as a medical professional. You have to go through the differential diagnosis to figure out what it is, right? So you have to go through asking the questions, doing the tests, all the things that need to be done. So it's the same thing in a work situation where you might have done this years and years in different companies, but in this company, there may be something that you're missing. So then you have to ask the right questions. So to say, hey, we're going to try this, it might be something you tried in another company and you're like, we're going to try this, but poke holes in it. It might be that they're like, no, this is brilliant, let's do it. But then it might be that somebody's like, well, I can see where with us, this might be, here's the poke hole, this might be a problem. Oh, well, you know what? That's something I didn't take into consideration, so you might be right.
Hmm.
So, Tony, I know you had something to add to that.
Oh, no, no, I was going to ask. Well, that was amazing, how you described that. I think there is a kind of a modernized question. Are people using AI to critically think now?
In the place
You know
of
what I
critical
mean?
thinking.
Well, you just
Thousand
described that with
percent.
Google too.
1,000%.
1,000%.
And
It
I
just take my
A 1,000%.
brain out.
I encourage it though. I encourage it at my job for
So,
efficiency.
go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, no. But I encourage it because you still have to put in a prompt, right?
Right,
Get a result that's going to fit the situation.
right,
Right.
right.
So they're thinking about that prompt, but what they're doing is instead of spending 3, 4, 6, 8, 10 hours creating that proposal,
Yeah.
they're
Mhm.
getting it done in 30 seconds, 5
Right,
seconds,
right.
whatever it
Yeah.
is. So I encourage it in my business. I'm like, if you're not using it, you're falling behind and we
Right.
can't have that.
So I love this. And
In
this
chat,
is this is actually a
in
discussion.
chapter one, in chapter one,
We are
Right.
back to chapter one.
what let
Okay.
me in chapter one, it says what is critical thinking about? And it says asking the right questions.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Mm,
even in chat, you have to ask the right
Mm-hmm.
question
Mm-hmm.
to really get the right results because
Mm-hmm.
I've done some questions in chat and it's like, no, that's not what I mean. No, that's not what I need.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys
Mm-hmm.
And
uploaded like writing samples to it yet?
yeah, right, yeah,
Okay, good. Because
yeah. And
So, and
It's
recognize
interesting.
that from this perspective, remember where we are, right? So we are all adults in our grown people lives, in our professional lives. The question was about, are our students substituting AI for thinking critically, right? So
Right.
we are utilizing it to save us in certain areas. I use Claude to help me draft email every day, all day, because I take way too much time because I want to say everything the right way and I want to make sure that, everything comes across in Ndala's voice. And so I say to Claude, hey, I got this email. I need to respond and say, these are the times I have available. And I just put those in and Claude generates this beautiful email because it knows my tone. He knows my tone now. And so
Right.
he will do that. But the truth is, this right here, I just got this from a friend of mine. She sent me something off of Instagram and it says everyone is cheating their way through college. So this is an article that this guy named James Walsh wrote, and it says he's got this screenshot. He says, "Hi chat, I need your help writing an essay." Chat says, "I'd be happy to help. Can I ask the topic or subject of the essay?" Student says, "Here's the prompt my teacher gave me. We've spent some time reading Martin Heidegger's The Question Concerning Technology and Donna Haraway's A Cyborg Manifesto this semester. Please use these different philosophies on technological progress and apply them to contemporary technological development. Write the essay as a college freshman who's a little dumb." Chat says, that's a rich and challenging prompt. Do you want an outline to get you started or for me to start drafting the full essay? Student says, the full essay, please, 4 pages.
Mm.
So we have come
Hilarious.
through the education system, and we have come through having to think critically.
Right.
There was no
To
AI.
get that software.
You had to get it done, right? So now what we have is students who don't really want to do any thinking themselves. They just want to have AI do it for them. So then he says that he went out and he did this big survey with students. And one of them said, and this is why my girlfriend sent this to me, she said, this one student is a freshman finance major at one of this particular city's top universities. And he says, I use AI a lot, like every day. And I do believe it could take away that critical thinking part. But it's just now that we rely on it, we really can't imagine living without it.
Right.
So are we taking away, does AI, if we are not taught properly how to utilize it, because I don't tell my students not to use it, the students that I had, I was basically saying, this is how to use it properly. We talked about the prompts, we talked about using your own mind to develop the concepts, but allowing it to be an assist to you, not doing all of your work for you. But unfortunately, that's what's happening.
And that's a good point because what Sory was saying was that if you're not using it, you're falling behind.
That's
so I
true.
I think in a collegiate, environment, in an environment where learning is the point, learning how to think and how to learn is the point. I think because I'm in school now too, and I can tell when someone has generated something through AI versus having a thoughtful response to it. But I can see how, in that sense, in that part, if you're not using it, you're left behind. And then to what advantage or disadvantage of not using it do you fall on the cost benefit analysis of it?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, that I use it for everything. For me, it's one of those things where I have to look at it, I have to read it thoroughly because I can't produce something that doesn't completely encompass everything that I wanted it to, right? Like, as much as I can give it a prompt to say something, it's going to miss it, right? And the thinking portion comes in where you have to read it thoroughly and change it to make it fit for the situation, right? Like, it can come up with some great stuff, no lie, and super quick, which is what I need. And I can come up with super stuff, like great stuff too, but it's going to take me an hour versus 3 seconds. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So in your workspace, productivity and process and progress is really important, right? Because that's what you're doing every day. But for students, they should be immersed in that. They should be immersed in. I remember when SPSS, I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but when I was working on my doctorate, I was taking a statistics class, and there was a system that was called SPSS, statistical packages, basically. And you could plug all the information into the system and it would shoot out your answers for you on the computer. My dad couldn't stand SPSS. He was a statistician and he had this stuff in his head, like the whole textbook memorized. He could do computations like nobody's business when it came to statistics. And he was a fantastic statistics professor. And he said, this is not, it's going to help you get to the end of your program, sure, but it's not going to help you think through the statistical problem. You won't understand how to operate the T-score if all you do is stick the T-score into the system and it does it for you. So I think when it comes to education, that's the critical thinking part that students need to recognize, is that they are learning, just like you said, learning to learn, learning to think. Whereas we're already in the professional space, we're learning to, everybody's lifelong learners. But like with me, I would never shoot out an email that I don't read. Do you know how many students shoot out papers and they don't look at them? They don't look at them. They just put it in AI, it pumps out the paper, they attach it and they go. Now, a lot of universities now are locking down on that because there are systems like Turnitin that are upgrading their system to recognize AI. So now you can get flagged straight up. They can tell you what percentage was AI and what's not, you know, but still it's this thinking process. And can you imagine a world where people don't think critically at all? Like
we have one.
We live in it.
We live in it. That's our administration.
Rethinking Thinking is available on Amazon.com.
There's some critical,
just plug this in.
There's some critical elements that I think most people never have learned in the last 30 years. And that is this information altogether accurate? If you understood how Google, Google it for everybody is the catchphrase. Well, Google is only web scraping what someone else said or wrote or reposted. So that's not an accurate, series of information. You have to get to the text sometimes. Sometimes you have to actually go to the source. And now we have AI that is basically a higher level model of that same idea with a more creative component, but it still needs accuracy in the information you're giving it so that it can bring you to a good conclusion. Then you need to be able to deduce how much of that conclusion applies to the things that you need to get done. Everybody can sit in and plug in to give me a marketing plan. That's not going to assess whether or not this is a more Christian environment. It's not going to tell you. It doesn't even know to tell you that yet. You know what I'm saying? We're not at that level. And so there's some value points that I think you're pointing out in this book that, and I definitely would get on social media, Ndala, and just talk about that because it's right now, it's at a critical stage where people don't even try to rationalize. They'll deduce whatever's said to them and then go, yeah, the earth is flat. And the reason it's flat because this guy said that it's impossible for the sun to do this. And I'm like, bro, the sun went from here to here. That's a round. That's a movement. The moon, the sun, they're both round. We got, we're looking at it.
We're looking at it.
I watched a podcast where this argument took place with Dr. Mark Lamont Hill on a podcast. And Ndala, your TikTok that you had about we were talking about reliable sources and verifiable information, peer-reviewed information, things that have already been researched and using that information. But yeah, like he was saying, it's people just take what's there. They take what's there. And that's it's really scary too, especially when you know that there are people on TikTok right now who are posting things consistently and then will tell you at the end of the post, everything I told you was not true. There are people right now, and they will tell you seriously. So today, I saw in the news that XYZ happened, and I was reading last week that XYZ happened along with that. So now that verifies that. They get to the end of the TikTok and they go, see how easy it is to give you information that is completely inaccurate and false?
Right.
So there are people out there saying that. Go ahead, sorry.
How many people actually watch it to the end or even fact check what it is that they're hearing?
Yeah.
Right.
Not a lot.
Not a lot at all. Right.
So
And so like even my girlfriend will post and she's an avid poster. You guys have to follow her, Pauline France. And she's very, very passionate about things. And
Okay.
what she will do is she will see something, she will go fact check it, and she'll come back and she'll post about it, and it's hysterical. Like it's just
Wow.
really, really hysterical.
so
Yeah.
I wrote her name down. I'm gonna have to try to follow.
Yeah, you have to check it out. Pauline
Pauline
France.
who?
Pauline
France.
Pauline France. Is it France?
Like the country. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So I want to be really respectful of your time, and I know I had only set this for an hour, and we've gone overboard. And I could, it's me, so I could sit here and talk critical thinking for hours. So, but we're not going to do that. I am so appreciative of you guys. Is there one thing that you want to say before we close? Is there one thing that you're taking away from this conversation, or something left over that you want to just say really quick about the book?
Thank you, Ndala.
Thank you, Ndala.
100%.
But I think,
Thank you for the discussion. Thanks everybody for being here as well.
Yeah.
Pleasure to meet you all or re-meet you all.
Yeah.
Likewise. Yeah. My one thing I take away is perspective, and it's gotten to the point now where I get on my wife's nerves. I'm like, because she'll come up, somebody said this. Well, what if they were this? What if this was the scenario? Did you think about if that person was maybe having an emergency or a health issue? So thank you, Ndala.
I know Michi's gonna call me and be like, "I hate you."
No, but thank you for putting this book out.
Yes, thank you.
I really, really appreciate it. It's been on my boyfriend's nightstand for a little while. He told me he wanted to read it, so I'm like kind of shoving it.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
I want to have discussions about it.
No, I feel you. I feel you. The discussions can be really good too, and it can be helpful in a relationship situation. I love how you can apply this framework to a relationship, especially because how many times when people argue, it's point of view, right? I think I'm right. I think I'm right. You know, it could be a miscommunication that happened because there wasn't clarity about something. I mean, I just love the fact that this framework can be applied to relationships as well as everything else. So, yeah. Okay. So
Sory said everything's a relationship.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Everything's a relationship. I am going to put this in the chat. I downloaded this yesterday, and my new marketing manager, Tony Harvey, told me to download this. So I'm gonna, let's see if I can put it in here. And this is so weird for me because I had no idea this even existed. I just downloaded this. It's a link to a site called Buy Me a Coffee. And if at some point you feel like, let me just support Ndala a little bit, evidently, this is a space where you can do that. So it allows you to donate, like, you know, to the whole latte movement, or to my espresso shot that I do in the mornings. And I'm going to be doing a 5 minutes and a frappuccino that's going to be a little bit longer than the regular espresso shot that I've been putting out there. So 5 minutes and a frappuccino is going to be something else that might have a scenario or situation behind it that I can expound on a little bit and put that on YouTube as well. But I am just so appreciative for the support that I've gotten with this book. I appreciate the fact that not only are people supporting and buying, I have an aunt who told me she buys books that her friends write just to support them, and then she won't read them. She's just like, I'm buying the book to support you, as I'm just giving you, you know, but she won't read it. I am so grateful that when people are buying the book and they're reading the book, they're finding value in what it is that's in there. So thank you guys so much for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for writing it. Listen, you know, I'm going to share it. I've already got a couple of meetings that I'll be going into, and I'll be talking about it. You know, obviously big up in it. You know, big up in it.
Big up in it. Thank you.
On your behalf, Ndala. You know, I love it. You know, I love you. So
thank you, and I love you guys too. Each one of you guys, actually, right here in this space, I love each one of you guys for different reasons, and I am so grateful that you guys were here with me this evening. So yeah.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm going to stop recording.